And there are some books on this list that I am hoping get picked. And there are some books on this list that I'm really hoping don't get picked for me to read. But was this really the book that should have been recommended to read first? No! Absolutely not. But if it was an actual person recommending it to me, they'd probably recommend the first in a series. Or in a series instead of this book. Likewise is an app for TV shows, movies, podcasts, books, all the things, where you put in what you like and what you don't like, and then it gives you suggestions. So I thought, let's put it to the test. Let's read 3 books that it suggests to me and see if they're any good. I'm really hoping that I find some new gems here because that would be awesome. Like, I'm always getting and giving book recommendations to other people, but as people, we are inherently flawed, and we must accept our coming technology overlords. So I logged onto Likewise, super easy, set up an account, started liking things, disliking things, then using the suggestion tabs based on what I liked, I started collecting book recommendations, and I quickly realized that this was way too many all at once. Like, this app was just shoveling books at me. And so I gave myself the stipulation that I would only save the ones that had at least a 4-star rating on Goodreads. Now, I know that just because a book has a 3.9 on Goodreads doesn't mean it's bad. Some of my favorite books of all time, which I did even put into Likewise, have a 3.9 on Goodreads. But we had to narrow it down somehow, and that seemed like the best way to go about it, so here's where we got. And Likewise is fantastic that it has the Goodreads score right there in the book page. I liked it. Not to say that the app was perfect, it did freeze on me a few times, and it was really hard to figure out how to update the suggested list, because the suggested lists aren't bottomless. So I'd go through, the 20 books on the suggested list, and then I'd go like some more books, put in some more dislikes, and then I'd go back to the suggested list and it'd be the same one, and I'd have to like close the app or reopen it or go into different tabs and stuff in order to refresh the suggestions list based on my new inputs. So this app will all be worth it if it gives me a new favorite book. I mean, probably my new favorite book is one of the ones I didn't accept because it had a 3.9 on Goodreads, but you win some, you lose some, right? So I kept doing that process until I had 60 recommendations. 60! And it only took me like an hour, so it wasn't even that bad. And there are some books on this list that I am hoping get picked, and I'll explain how they get picked in just a minute because it's going to be exciting. And there are some books on this list that I'm really hoping don't get picked for me to read. So originally I just thought, I'll just pick whatever books on this app seem interesting. But then I remembered that I am testing whether this app can recommend things to me well. And so we should really just let the app decide. And we are adding a randomness element. We are using the magical D20. I'm going to pick 3 books from my 60 options, which means we get 1 roll for a book from the first third, 1 for the second, and 1 for the third. Other stipulations. If it suggests to me like the second book in a series, I'm just gonna read the first. So let's get this party started. First book, let's see what we get. 17. Okay, time to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 17. Tortel and Other Lands by Tamara Pierce. It doesn't look like a sequel to anything. I've kind of always wanted to read a Tamara Pierce book. Let's see what we get. Floor. 14, 15, 16. We have Shadow's Edge by Brent Weeks. I'm pretty sure this isn't a book 1, so let's do some Googling. So it's part of the Night Angel trilogy, and the first book is The Way of Shadows. Okay, and for the last third, let's see. 9. Mind of My Mind by Octavia E. Butler. Okay, which looks like it's a sequel to the novel Pattern Master. Oh, this is hard. It seems like they were published out of order? So Pattern Master is the first book published, but the last in the series' internal chronology. Help! What book do you read first? Let's see what the internet recommends. The internet is disagreeing with itself. Some people are saying to read them publication order. Some people are saying to read them chronological order. You know what we're gonna do? It probably doesn't even matter which book I read first if they can be read in one order or entirely reverse order. I could just start in the middle. I'm just going to do whatever one is highest rated on Goodreads. Fine, fine. Which is Wild Seed. So we're gonna go with that one. And let's see if I like them. I'm pretty excited to put Likewise and myself to the test here. So, Were these books good recommendations for me? I can now tell you the answer. The first book I read was The Way of Shadows by Brent Weeks, which I rated 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. There was a nice balance between action intrigue and emotional character problems. There was a nice mystery unfolding of who is Durzo Blint and what are all the secrets he's keeping. And it was right up my alley with a fantasy book. It did have problems, such as feeling pretty derivative from the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb, and some sexism. But you can go check out my video review of The Way of Shadows if you want more of my thoughts, because I do have some good thoughts on that book. And also keep an eye out for my review of book 2, which I liked way less than book 1. So that'll be coming out soon. Next book I read was Tortal and Other Lands by Tamara Pierce. Did I enjoy this book? Yes. Was recommending a Tamara Pierce book a good recommendation for me? Yes, I enjoyed her writing. I think her characters are fun. But was this really the book that should have been recommended to read first? No. Absolutely not. Because this book, Tortal and Other Lands, is a collection of short stories, most of which are spin-offs from her other series. So I feel like this is the book that you read after you've read all those other series, or at least a lot of them, and then you can fully appreciate the stories here. For me, it was just really confusing a lot of the times. I will say my peak disappointment with this book was, well, let's take a step back. My favorite story in this book was called Elder Brother, and it was a wonderful tale. I thought that short story in itself was like 5 stars, and it's about an apple tree that gets turned into a man inadvertently from some other character's shenanigans, and then he has to kind of learn how to be human and make friends and figure out about this world. And I was so excited when I finished that short story to read more books about this character. Guess what? Of all the short stories in the anthology, this is one of them that does not really connect to other books. I would have jumped right into those books, especially because of the setting, which was another disappointment because this setting isn't the one that's actually Tortal and featured in the other books. Because most fantasy you read that's like in olden times, it's heavily European influenced. But this short story, Elder Brother and one other, were like Middle Eastern inspired medieval fantasy, and it was wonderful and gorgeous and different, and I loved it, and I'd love to read more stories like that. Unfortunately, those aren't the stories that Tamara Pierce has already published. But I am excited to read more Tamara Pierce, so in that way, the app has succeeded in broadening my horizons. And last, I read Wild Seed by Octavia E. Butler. This is another one, 4-star read for me. I loved this book. Keep an eye out for a more detailed review, because I'll definitely be doing that. This book was haunting and interesting and explored different culture, from traditional African culture to being in a cult in America, to weird sci-fi, fantasy, magical realism, whatever you want to call this genre. And the characters were all flawed and interesting, and I loved reading about them, and I can't wait to read more Octavia Butler books. So was this a good recommendation for me? Yeah, absolutely. I should have been reading these books years ago. But now let's talk a little bit more in depth about my actual experience using the app, because it wasn't all good. I actually have a lot of complaints. Though Likewise does claim that the more thumbs up, thumbs down you give, the better it'll be able to predict you, I felt like the more thumbs up and thumbs down I gave, the more confused and less good the recommendations got. Because when I first started out, and I only had 15 thumbs up, thumbs downs in there, it was actually giving me a lot of authors that I had heard of and already wanted to read. I was recognizing that these were good recommendations off the bat. But then the more I put thumbs up, thumbs down in there, the more weird the recommendations got and started giving me war stories and where did those even come from? Maybe if I just keep giving it thumbs up, thumbs down, it'll get good again. And also, the more I used the app, the lower the number of recommendations it would give me, until finally, I couldn't even find the suggested for you lists. Maybe they just took it off altogether on the app, but it was annoying, because that was the reason I wanted to use the app, and then it was gone. I was able to find the you may also like lists on the website, which I found easier to use in some ways, but also I couldn't figure out how thumbs up, thumbs down things on the website, so that that has its own user interface problems. So, will I be continuing to use Likewise? Probably not. And though everything that it suggested to me I read and it was winners, and I'll probably keep using the long list of books that I did cultivate in order to get new suggestions, I already have such a long list of books I want to read that it's like I don't need more suggestions, and using the app is honestly just such a headache that I'm done with it. Comment with a thumbs up emoji if you made it to the end of the video, and thanks for watching. And if you're interested in buying this or other t-shirts, go check out my store because I've designed a bunch. Like, this t-shirt, I just kind of designed for myself because I wanted it, but there are other cooler designs and more to come, so go check them out.